Hello everyone, and welcome back to Guth, Reading Irish Myths and Legends, with myself, Dr. Emmett Taylor. Here, we read out-of-copyright academic translations of medieval Irish literature. No retellings or reimaginings, just the words of medieval Ireland, right to your ears. The Gabáil and t-Shída, the taking of the sheath, or taking of the mound, is an exceptionally interesting, short, early tale which introduces several key ideas that are rather important for our understanding of medieval Irish literature, and any particular potential early tradition that it may be drawing on. The story is concerned with some of the characters we saw in the previous episode from the mythological cycle, and has references to the taking of Ireland by the sons of Miel, best known from Le Vogue of Ara Éireann, the Book of Invasions. If you have read other pieces of medieval Irish literature, what follows may be a familiar story to you, as it is also found in Tochmhac Édain, The Wooing of Édain. Like Aisling Oingeasol, this tale is described as one of the Remscéil of Tombo Cúlana, but just like Aisling Oingeasol, it is rather unclear how it is supposed to relate to said tale. The story has been identified as being written in Old Irish, which is the form of Irish in use approximately between 600 and 900. It appears in two manuscripts, Trinity College Dublin Manuscript 1339, better known as the Book of Leinster, and Royal Irish Academy Manuscript DIV2. Today, we'll be reading Vernam Hull's translation of the tale, available in volume 19 of the journal Zeitschrift für celtische Philologie, originally published in 1933. Please pardon my atrocious German pronunciation there. For those of you who are interested in more recent translations, you can find one by John Carey in the book The Celtic Heroic Age, Literary Sources for Ancient and Celtic Europe and Early Ireland from 1994. Or, alternatively, the most recent translation by Grigory Bondarenko in his chapter Autochthons in Other Worlds in Celtic and Slavic, which was originally published in Celts and Slavs in Central and Southeastern Europe, Proceedings of the Third International Colloquium of the Societas Celto-Slavica from 2010. Now, let us begin. Here follows the seizure of the Fairy Hill. There was a famous king of the Tuatha Dé in Ireland. His name was Dagon. Great then was his power, even though it belonged to the Macmillan after the conquest of the country, for the Tuatha Dé destroyed the corn and the milk round about the Macmillan, until they made the friendship of the Dagda. Afterwards, he saved their corn and milk. Now, when he was king at first, his might was vast, and it was he who apportioned out the fairy mounds to the men of the Tuatha Dé, namely Loch MacEthland in Sheath Rothrúvan and Olkma in Sheath Arkeltra. But for the Dagda himself, Sheath Lehet Lochtvaga, a Sheath, Knocht Bauna, and Brú Ruar. As, however, they say, he had Sheath and Vroga from the beginning. Then Mac Och came to the Dagda in order to petition for land after it had been distributed to each one. He was, moreover, a fosterling to Mizir of Brí Leath and to Ninjas the Seer. I have none for thee, said the Dagda. I have completed the division. Therefore, let be granted to me, said the Mac Och, even a day and a night in thy own dwelling. That, then, was given to him. Now go to thy following, said the Dagda, since thou hast consumed thy allotted time. It is clear, said he, that night and day are the length of the whole world, and it is that which has been given to me. Thereupon the Dagda went out, and the Mac Och remained in his sheath. Wonderful, moreover, is that land. 3 trees with fruit are there always, and a pig eternally alive, and a roasted swine, and a vessel with marvellous liquor, and never do they all decrease. Now, while this is a particularly short tale, I have always found it one of the more interesting pieces from the mythological cycle, as an example of a tale with intertextual connections, an academic way of saying pieces of this story show up in other stories, such as the aforementioned links with other stories, such as those that discuss how Oingus took his home, and how Ireland was captured by the sons of Miel. As a teaching tool, I find it a really lovely introductory piece, as it brings attention to some of the key elements about medieval Irish literature. In particular, it introduces the idea that the Tuatha Danann, the supernatural peoples of Ireland, originally ruled the surface of the island, but have been pushed beneath the earth with the arrival of the ancestors of the Gael, or Irish. We see that different members of the Tuatha Danann, like the myriad regional kings of medieval Ireland, rule over specific Shída, hollow hills, barrow mounds, elf mounds, fairy hills, whatever you might want to translate the term as, and therefore appear to hold control over different territories. Consider what we saw last week, where different rulers had control over different portions of land in the Otherworld. The Dagda was recognized as the king of the entire Otherworld, while Bald of Derg was recognized as the king of the Otherworld of Munster. These Shída are entrances to this Otherworld, which is a beautiful, surreal realm of abundance, wonder, and occasionally severe danger. Of particular relevance for the next tale we will discuss, I would like to bring your attention to the idea in the introduction of our story that the Tuatha Danann, despite being banished or sealed away by the ancestors of the Irish, retain an ability to influence the human world by intentionally damaging humanity's grain and milk. The Tuatha Danann here are not benevolent, but a rival force that humanity, even after defeating them, must bind with a formal treaty to limit or control the danger they pose. This, I would hasten to emphasize, does not mean we should interpret the Tuatha Danann as evil. While they are absolutely a malignant supernatural force in our story, they are no more malignant or dangerous to one of the Irish kingdoms than any dreadfully mundane neighboring rival who is raiding them, and like human neighbors, can have agreements made with them to force everyone involved to behave. In terms of previous scholarship for this tale, I would like to draw particular attention to Martina Maher's chapter Die Gabáil und Ida Remscale or Remremscale in Eulidia 4. In addition to being a very interesting discussion of how this tale might relate to Tombo Kulina, it does an excellent job summarizing the previous discussions of the tale, particularly the various perspectives of how this tale might be related to the Tán. Maher argues, quite convincingly from my perspective, that the tale is not intended as a Remremscale, a pre-story, intended as a Remscale of Aisling Oingesul, itself a Remscale of the Tán, a view supported as early as the works of Rudolf Thurneisen. Instead, Maher argues that our story is intended not so much to introduce characters or function as we may understand a prequel to today, but as a story that introduces a key idea, something somewhat complex, but nevertheless central to the Tán, the concept of verbal manipulation. For those of you who have not had Thurneisen's Grammar of Old Irish indelibly seared into your soul, this may sound somewhat curious. Verbal manipulation. While there is manipulation in our story, it is relatively simple. The Dagda agreed to a bad deal, and while he was pressured into it, is it verbal manipulation? Well, rather annoyingly, the elegance of the trick employed here by Oingus is somewhat lost in translation. In English we have two articles, the, which is the definite article, and a, the indefinite article. Consider the difference between me saying, the student is working on their essay, compared to, a student is working on their essay. While this difference is subtle, the former suggests there is a specific student in question that I'm referring to, while the latter is far vaguer. I could be referring to any student. I might even be implying that only one student of a group is working. Now, Irish, both medieval and modern, lacks an indefinite article, and in this little quirk of grammar sits Oingus's trap. There is no way to differentiate between saying, give me your house for day and night, and give me your house for a day and a night. The Dagda seemingly agreed to the latter, assuming that Oingus just wanted it for a single day-night cycle, while Oingus actually meant day and night, in the sense of all days and all nights, which, as he says, is the way in which the world is measured. Verbal manipulation and exploiting unclear or uncertain words is a topic that I am very familiar with, as it serves as a chapter of my doctoral dissertation. Heroes, such as Cuchulainn in the Tán, will, when the opportunity presents itself and they have need, cheat or use other underhanded tactics to gain an edge, with manipulative wording being one of these methods. This, let me stress, is not a unique idea to myself, and has been discussed by the scholar Philip O'Leary in his excellent piece verbal deceit in the Ulster cycle. While we will not be reading Tombo Kulina as part of this series, the academic translations are too recent to be out of copyright for quite some time now, I would like to highlight an example of this verbal manipulation. In the first recension of the Tán, Cuchulainn duels a man named Nath Crantal. Due to some events the previous day, Nath Crantal challenges Cuchulainn to stand facing each other and throw their spears at each other, promising not to dodge the incoming blow, with Cuchulainn going first. This is intended by Nath Crantal to be a way of killing Cuchulainn, forcing him to take a blow with a spear. Cuchulainn, that devious little sprite, agrees with a single emendation, I nartha, in height. When Nath Crantal throws his spear at Cuchulainn, he leaps above it. When Nath Crantal admonishes him for this, Cuchulainn explains that it was within the rules they agreed to, that leaping over the spear is acceptable, as it falls into his exception of in height. However, when Cuchulainn offers his return blow, he throws his spear nearly vertically, so it descends on his rival from above. Leaping will offer no protection, and Cuchulainn kills the rival hero with his wordplay. This may be what the purpose of our story is as a Remschale. It's to introduce this idea of verbal manipulation, of exploiting unclear or ambiguous language to gain an edge. But, this aside, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Guth, and that our tale today has given you something to think about. We will be back shortly with a new story, and as ever, if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, please feel free to contact me at irishlegendspodcast@gmail.com. Until next time.